Hi everyone. Welcome to Audiobook Academy. In today's audio we will gonna talk about the secrets of happiness. What are the benefits of happiness? I understand that this might sound like a silly question, but it's worth asking still. Why would a person want to be happier? Are there any real benefits, or are we just chasing some idea that we've somehow decided was good? Well, as it turns out, there's a lot of research in psychology that's shown the benefits of being happy. By looking at people who are happy, we can also see if they experience other positive life events as well. In general, happiness tends to lead to success in a lot of different areas because happiness is related to things like confidence, optimism, sociability, being helpful, coping with challenges, creativity, and physical health. These key connections can mean greater successes down the line. Let's look at career success first. Is it possible that happier people tend to find more success in their work lives, compared to less happy people? The evidence has been pretty clear. As one major review of the scientific evidence puts it, people with a greater sense of well-being are more likely to secure job interviews, to be evaluated more positively by supervisors once they obtain a job, to show superior performance and productivity, and to handle managerial jobs better. Indeed, people who are happier are also more likely to graduate college, to get better jobs, and to be more satisfied with those jobs. And it's not just that people are happy because they have better careers. One study measured how happy people were when they were 18, and then followed up with those same people 8 years later to see how well they were doing in their lives. As expected, people's job success at age 26 was related to how happy they were at age 18. From this, it's clear that developing greater well-being can pay off later in life. But it's not all about job success. What about social success? Here again, happiness is related to that amount of success. Many studies have now shown that the happier person is, the more friendships her or she has. And it's not just friends, friends that people say they can rely on, people who offer true social support. Really good, high-quality social connections. It also turns out to be the case that happier people tend to be less jealous of others, and they tend to report feeling less lonely than unhappy people. And as before, it's not just that having friends makes you happy. Other research has shown that it's feeling happy that causes people to be more sociable, and to have better interactions with other people. Okay, finally, let's look at health benefits of happiness. In general, happier people report feeling physically better and experiencing less pain than unhappy people. They're also less likely to engage in harmful, unhealthy behaviors like smoking, eating high-calorie diets, and abusing drugs and alcohol. In fact, one study exposed healthy volunteers to a rhinovirus, which is the cause of the common cold. The researchers monitored participants to see how they reacted to the virus. The results showed that whether or not these participants actually developed a cold depended on their general happiness. The more people had a positive emotional style, the less likely they were to actually develop a cold, which suggests that positive emotions are somehow associated with a healthier immune system. So in conclusion, there are plenty of benefits to happiness beyond the simple pleasures that positive emotions can bring. Happiness is related to job success, social connections, and greater physical health. Knowing these benefits, then, should hopefully motivate you to look for ways to boost your positive emotions, and the strategies in this course will help you do that. What is happiness? The question of happiness has been explored for many years. You can even trace it back to the ancient Greeks, when philosophers pondered the question of what it means to live the good life. You can find discussions of happiness in old Buddhist texts as well. Fast forward to modern times, and we're still asking those questions. There's no question that we want to be happy. In fact, the Declaration of Independence points out that the universal right is the pursuit of happiness. But what is happiness, really? No doubt you've talked and thought about the concept of happiness many times, but how would you define it? Well, it's clear that we're talking about an emotion, and a positive one, of course. Some sources define happiness as an emotional state of well-being defined by positive or pleasant emotions ranging from contentment to intense joy. Psychologists have identified several important contributors to happiness. 1. of these inputs is something called the happiness set point. This is a person's general tendency to feel happiness, which is determined by things like genetics and birth variables. The second input is life circumstances. These include things like one's marital status and income, general variables that exist in one's life. And finally, there are intentional or voluntary activities, choices we make, and behaviors we can control. These are the things that we'll talk about in this course, things that we can do to directly influence our happiness. As a point of reference, in her book, The How of Happiness, Sonia Lyubomirsky suggests that about 50% of our happiness is determined by our set point, and only about 10% is determined by life circumstances. But the remaining 40% comes down to the choices we make. This means that a substantial amount of our emotional well-being is under our control, and that's what you're gonna learn in this course. Next up, let's take a look at some of the benefits of happiness to show that this controllable set of choices that we make every day not only makes us happier, but can make us more successful as well. Why is worth being happy? What are the benefits of happiness? I understand that this might sound like a silly question after you've already chosen to join this online course, but it's worth asking still. Why would a person want to be happier? Are there any real benefits, or are we just chasing some idea that we've somehow decided was good? Well, as it turns out, there's a lot of research in psychology that's shown the benefits of being happy. By looking at people who are happy, we can also see if they experience other positive life events as well. In general, happiness tends to lead to success in a lot of different areas because happiness is related to things like confidence, optimism, sociability, being helpful, coping with challenges, creativity, and physical health. These key connections can mean greater successes down the line. Let's look at career success first. Is it possible that happier people tend to find more success in their work lives, compared to less happy people? The evidence has been pretty clear. As one major review of the scientific evidence puts it, people with a greater sense of well-being are more likely to secure job interviews, to be evaluated more positively by supervisors once they obtain a job, to show superior performance and productivity, and to handle managerial jobs better. Indeed, people who are happier are also more likely to graduate college, to get better jobs, and to be more satisfied with those jobs. And it's not just that people are happy because they have better careers. One study measured how happy people were when they were 18, and then followed up with those same people 8 years later to see how well they were doing in their lives. As expected, people's job success at age 26 was related to how happy they were at age 18. From this, it's clear that developing greater well-being can pay off later in life. But it's not all about job success. What about social success? Here again, happiness is related to that amount of success. Many studies have now shown that the happier person is, the more friendships her or she has. And it's not just friends friends that people say they can rely on, people who offer true social support. Really good, high-quality social connections. It also turns out to be the case that happier people tend to be less jealous of others, and they tend to report feeling less lonely than unhappy people. And as before, it's not just that having friends makes you happy. Other research has shown that it's feeling happy that causes people to be more sociable, and to have better interactions with other people. Okay, finally, let's look at health benefits of happiness. In general, happier people report feeling physically better and experiencing less pain than unhappy people. They're also less likely to engage in harmful, unhealthy behaviors like smoking, eating high-calorie diets, and abusing drugs and alcohol. In fact, one study exposed healthy volunteers to a rhinovirus, which is the cause of the common cold. The researchers monitored participants to see how they reacted to the virus. The results showed that whether or not these participants actually developed a cold depended on their general happiness. The more people had a positive emotional style, the less likely they were to actually develop a cold, which suggests that positive emotions are somehow associated with a healthier immune system. So in conclusion, there are plenty of benefits to happiness beyond the simple pleasures that positive emotions can bring. Happiness is related to job success, social connections, and greater physical health. Knowing these benefits, then, should hopefully motivate you to look for ways to boost your positive emotions, and the strategies in this course will help you do that. Gratitude and the power that simply saying thank you can have when it comes to our happiness and sense of well-being. Before we get into the science of gratitude and happiness though, let's take a second to do the actual exercise. And we'll do this first before we understand even more about it, because as we'll see in the next lecture, saying thank you and keeping a gratitude diary can be a great way to practice gratitude in an everyday situation and boost your well-being over time. So let's do the exercise now. All it takes is just a couple of minutes, and if you do this every few days, or at least once a week, you might find the many benefits that large-scale research studies have discovered. Here's the exercise. Think about 3 things you're thankful for. What are 3 things in your life that are a benefit to you, and without which you'd be at least a little bit worse off? There's no perfect answer to this, and if you're having some trouble getting started, I'll give you 3 of my own. 1. I'm thankful that I'm able to call my family on the phone and hear about their days. 2. I'm thankful that I got to take a walk this morning before it started to rain. I was cutting it close, I have to say. 3. I'm thankful that I have a place to call home. Now some of those are big things, like home and family, but there's also something that seems pretty trivial, taking a walk before it rained. But I'm thankful nonetheless. So try doing this right now. Pause the course and either write down these 3 things you're thankful for or just spend a couple minutes thinking about them. Try doing this once a week. Set a reminder on your phone or on your calendar. It's the kind of thing that can seem so simple that you forget to do it, but trust me, it's a simple exercise that can pay off big, and you don't have to come up with a million different things you're thankful for. Just 3, that's all I'm asking. 3 things that you are thankful for, and I hope that it helps. Say thank you. Well, hopefully you went ahead and did that gratitude exercise in the last lesson, and it was nice for you to go along with things and maybe even just accept when I told you this was a good thing to do, and that giving thanks and appreciating what you have is something that leads to happiness over time, but don't just take my word. Now I'm going to show you that there is a bunch of research, a ton of research that's shown really strongly the powerful effects that gratitude can have. Okay, here's the thing that proves to me how this thing works, a really good case of scientific methodology applied to the science of happiness. A set of researchers had people participate in their study where they did one of 3 exercises, one of which was to say 5 things that they were thankful for that happened in the previous week. They would do this every week for 10 weeks. The other group of people came up with 5 things that they found challenging or a hassle in the previous week, and they did that every week for 10 weeks. And another condition had people doing some other kind of writing exercise that wasn't really related too much at all. These were people who were just writing about things that happened to them, but not having to do with thankfulness or challenge. So a whole bunch of people were doing this writing exercise every week for 10 weeks, and at the end of the 10 weeks, they measured how happy people were, amongst a bunch of other measures. And what they found was that the people who did the gratitude writing exercise were fully 25% happier than people who had done the other exercises. That simple task of writing down 5 things they were thankful for just 10 weeks, was enough to create large increases in happiness over time. And it wasn't just happiness. They were also more optimistic about the future and experienced a lot of other benefits. For example, they were ending up doing 1.5 hours more exercise per week than people in the other conditions, even though they weren't told to do so. So this makes clear that regularly practicing a sense of gratitude, rehearsing the things that you are thankful for, focusing on what you can appreciate in your life, is a simple way to find fulfillment. In fact, one study showed that people who did this writing exercise just one time online, in an online survey, had increased happiness up to several months later. They had people participate in that writing exercise, the gratitude one or some control, not related writing exercise online, and then they followed up the next day, a couple days later, a week later, couple weeks later, a month later, etc. And even when you go a few months out from the actual single experience, the people who had done the gratitude exercise were still reporting more happiness in their lives than the people who had done some other exercise. That's a pretty powerful effect, I have to say, but I want to make one caveat. No need to overdo this. If you're trying to do the gratitude exercise every 10 minutes, it might backfire. You might be over-pursuing happiness like we've talked about already in this course, but in addition, you might find yourself struggling to come up with the things that you are thankful for. If you're doing this every single day, by day 6 you go, "Geez, I don't know what's left to be thankful for. Birds? I don't know. I'm thankful for birds?" If you find yourself struggling to come up with things that you are thankful for, that might actually reduce the power of this strategy. So don't do it regularly, don't do it that regularly. One study actually compared how often people did a gratitude exercise, and it was only the people who did it every week, rather than people who did it every day, that found the benefits of the exercise. So try your best. I know it's exciting, and once you find yourself being thankful, you get carried away. But do try to limit yourself to doing this exercise very briefly, casually, reflectively, once a week, and that might be the optimal amount of time for you to do it. Be kind of others. When I was in elementary school, I remember a program called Random Acts of Kindness. The way it works is that if anyone caught you doing something nice for another person, you'd get a little button that says Random Acts of Kindness on it. There was a raccoon on it for reasons I don't understand, but that's the program. So obviously, I was super into this program. My heart might not have been in the right place because I mostly just wanted to get a bunch of those buttons, but the idea was still to encourage a sense of community where kids were helping out other kids, creating a more interdependent, helpful environment. But what's interesting is that what may have also happened is that we, as the random kindness actors, might have gotten a boost from it ourselves. We might have felt happier because we were helping other people out, and in fact, that was probably the case. New research in psychology has started to look at the idea that helping other people can actually be a strong creator of happiness for ourselves. By me helping you, I get a benefit. I feel happier. I feel more satisfied in my life as a whole. And so, one of these research projects looked at a program like the Random Acts of Kindness program in my own school. It wasn't on me as far as I know, but the study looked at 19 classrooms in an elementary school. Some of the classrooms had been told to do this program. They'd been told that every week, you should, at least 3 times, do something nice for another person and keep track of it. So some kids are doing this regularly, looking for opportunities to do something small and nice for their peers. The other group was told that they should be on the lookout for opportunities to go somewhere they've never been, and keep track of that, do that 3 times a week. Nothing to do with kindness, but it's still an activity to keep the mind occupied. The question is, did this program have any success? What were its impacts? Well, throughout these weeks in which students were doing activities, happiness went up. Students began to feel better over the course of the program. But interestingly, it also developed a better sense of community. People felt more connected, more popular, the kids' way of putting it, when they were doing these random acts of kindness 3 times a week for a number of weeks. This just points out the idea that if we take a second to do something nice for another person, even if they'll never know it was us who did it, and even if it's not even that big of a deal at all, this simple act of helping another person can be enough to give us fulfillment in our lives. Look for those opportunities. Try to find times when you can do something small and nice for another person in a way that will help pay off for yourself. Mostly to pay off the other person. Again, we talked earlier in this course that if your focus is happiness, then these kinds of strategies might not be as helpful. But genuinely, try to help other people. And what you might find is that over time, you have a greater sense of life fulfillment yourself. If you're having trouble coming up with what some of these things might be, there is a website called randomactsofkindness.org where there's a whole bunch of ideas for things that you could do. For example, maybe you write an email to a coworker just to say, "Hey, I think you're great," or "You did a great job on whatever it is that we had to do last week." Simple. Is nice for another person. And could help you feel a little better yourself. Buy a small gift for another person. Let someone cut in front of you in line for the vending machine. Goofy little things that don't put you out any significant amount of time or money, but are a small show of appreciation and kindness for those around you. So try to develop a sense of acting kindly to people at random, without expecting to receive anything in return. Have a social snacks. It's clear from what we've seen so far in this section that social connections are important contributors to happiness. The more we connect with people in our lives, the happier we are. But is this what we always assume? Are there times when you might actually avoid connecting to other people because you think it's going to make you less happy? Imagine that you're taking the train to work, and a stranger sits down beside you. Do you think that you'll have a happier, more pleasant commute if you decide to work, read, or play a game on your phone by yourself, or if you decide to strike up a conversation with this stranger? Most people think that their commute will go more smoothly if they just keep to themselves and do their own thing. We tend to think that striking up a conversation is just gonna waste time, and we'll be frustrated that we gave up our precious time in order to small talk with a stranger. I know that I think that. In fact, this is actually what researchers found when they polled people at a big train station. When they asked a bunch of commuters, they found that these commuters tended to think that talking to a stranger would make the ride less pleasant than keeping to themselves. So are we right? Are we really better off sitting in solitude under these conditions? Well, not exactly. The same researchers designed an interesting experiment. They went up to a bunch of people in the train station and asked them if they'd participate in a simple study. If they agreed, they'd ask these commuters to ride the train that morning in one of three ways. Some people were asked to make a connection with a stranger on the train. Some people were asked to sit in solitude on the train, and the rest were told to ride the train as they always do. Everyone was given an envelope with a short survey inside that they were supposed to complete when they reached their destination. The survey asked questions about how they were feeling and how pleasant their ride was. And the commuters completed the survey and mailed it back to the researchers once they got off the train. So, does connecting with strangers really work? First, let's look specifically at what this group of people was asked to do. Here were the exact instructions. Contrary to what people expected, these people on the train had significantly more positive experiences when they were asked to form a connection with a stranger on their commute that morning, compared to when they kept to themselves. Not only did talking to a stranger and striking up a conversation make them feel as though they had a more pleasant commute, but they also felt more happy overall, and importantly, they didn't feel like they were any less productive than the people who were keeping to themselves during their commute. The lesson here is to have what some people call social snacks, form social connections during times when you otherwise might know. Get to know other people in the world even if it won't turn into long-term friendships or relationships. By finding little moments to connect with people around you, even though you're not gonna think it's gonna matter, you may actually find yourself leading a happier, more positive life. Smile. You're not going to believe me, but this pen is about to make me happier. Are you ready? Check it out. Are you convinced? You shouldn't be, because I haven't told you what just happened. Okay, here's the deal behind what I just showed you. There's some research that shows that when your body makes the face of happiness, it actually causes you to be happier. What do I mean by that? Well, the idea is that by activating the muscles in your face that are responsible for smiling, you actually then experience the emotion that goes with that muscle activation. So the way that some researchers did it back in the 1980s was they used a simple implement like a pen or a pencil, and they had people hold this instrument in their mouths in one of two ways. Either in the way that I just showed you, like this, which activates all of the muscles in your face responsible for smiling. Go ahead and try it yourself. Pick up a pen and bite down on it like I just did. Get your teeth on the pen itself, and you'll feel your muscles that are usually used by your face when you smile. They'll be activated as well with the pen in your mouth. So, half of the people in the study would have done that with the pen. The other half just to control for using a pen in your mouth, to make sure that's not what the effect was due to. They had the pen in their mouth like this. Okay? So they were holding the pen so that their teeth weren't touching it, and it was protruding like this. And that doesn't activate any of the muscles responsible for smiling. So they showed these people cartoons, drawn-out cartoons, and asked them to rate how funny these cartoons were. And interestingly, what they found was that the people holding the pen in their teeth, like this, in a way that activated their smiling muscles, they rated the cartoons as being funnier than the people who were holding the pen in the other way. The idea being that the cartoons didn't change, but the participants' facial muscles had changed. So what's going on here? It's that having your muscles in a smiling activation actually made the world seem like a more pleasant place, compared to when those muscles weren't activated. This is all really crazy sounding, I know. But there's been other research that's replicated these effects, and importantly, it's the case that you have to have the muscles involved in real, actual smiling to be activated, and not just kinda half of those muscles. So for example, if I hold the pen in my teeth, but it still isn't raising up the cheeks like this, then there's a marginal increase in how humorous cartoons are, according to subsequent research. But it's not the same as having the full, actual smiling muscle network activated in your face. There's a difference between real smiling and a fake smile. So if you've ever had your picture taken, and you kind of just lean back like this, you're not really smiling. You're faking a smile. You're getting close to a smile, but when you look at the pictures later, you know, you're not actually smiling. But there's a kind of smile called the Duchenne smile, which you can tell because it makes little crinkles here on the sides of your eyes. So you can tell the difference between real smile and a fake smile, and it turns out that this way of holding the pen activates a Duchenne smile, which is associated with real happiness. Okay, but what am I getting at? Am I actually telling you to hold pending your mouth as you go about your day? No, of course not. But the real point is that by simulating happiness in yourself, you might find a real increase in positive emotions as you go about your day. So it's not, you know, holding a pen in your mouth, but find opportunities to smile. Live your life in a way where you are pushing yourself to display that positivity, and over time, that might lead to greater experiences of positive emotion within you. Consider another study, though, that looked at a bunch of bus drivers, and they tracked their happiness over time, twice a day for 2 weeks, and what it came down to in this study was whether these bus drivers were faking positive interactions with the commuters, or whether they were trying to genuinely push themselves to have a better experience in their job. So people say fake it till you make it, and if you're just walking around faking smiles and trying to convince yourself that, you know, I'm trying to be happy, so let's just see what happens, it's not gonna do it. It's genuinely pushing yourself to experience positivity that then increases happiness over time. So the more these bus drivers said, you know, I made a genuine effort today to really appreciate commuters on the bus and feel positive emotion, those were the people who were actually then experiencing positive emotion and experiencing less negative emotion throughout the course of their work weeks. But the more those bus drivers said, you know, I try to put on a happy face while I'm driving this bus around, that was actually related to more negative emotion. So to consolidate all of this stuff, the key takeaway here is if you're looking to increase positive emotions like happiness, then you should take it upon yourself to smile and mean it. Just faking it until you make it is unlikely to work, just like holding a pen like this is unlikely to work. But push yourself. In everyday interactions, find an opportunity to smile. Think about something that makes you happy, and smile in a way where you genuinely mean it. And over time, you might find that this has actual boosts to your well-being and life satisfaction. Simplify your decision. Walk into any grocery store, and you'll quickly realize that we have a lot of choices that we could make every single moment of our lives. I know that when I look for cereal. It's so simple. It should be so easy. I walk down the cereal aisle, and I'm faced with an entire aisle filled with different kinds of cereal. You walk down another aisle, and you just want to buy ketchup or barbecue sauce, and there are so many options of each of them. Well, Barry Schwartz, a psychologist, has started to think that this amount of choice is bad for our happiness. He wrote a really influential book called The Paradox of Choice, and his argument is that when we live in a world that has this many choices available to us, even though it feels like it should be a benefit to us, it can actually backfire and make us less happy and satisfied overall. Schwartz and his colleagues have identified distinct types of people: maximizers and satisficers. Maximizers are the type of people who, when faced with some decision to make, you look at all of the available options and really critically evaluate each one. In the grocery store, this would be the type of person who goes through each box of cereal in the cereal aisle before finally making a choice about which is exactly the right choice for him or her. Satisficers, on the other hand, are the types of people who find some threshold, something that they want, and then they choose the first thing that meets that criterion. So for example, a satisficer goes, "I just want cereal that will be something that I'd like fine enough in the morning," walks down the aisle, finds one box that seems to satisfy that particular criterion, and walks away. Similarly, the satisficer might think, "I want to buy the least expensive ketchup in the ketchup aisle," and then the choice is really simple, and he or she picks the cheapest one. So you can see there's a difference between how people interact with the huge variety of choices that are available to us. People who are maximizing all of the potential options, these are the maximizers, and the people who just satisfy a simple criterion and go with making a simple choice, those are our satisficers. The question is, does that difference with dealing with choice have any real impact? One really popular study that influenced a ton of research in the psychology of decision-making looked at whether people were able to choose a product when they had a few options available to them versus a whole bunch of options available to them. In this case, what they did is sometimes they present people with 6 types of jams and have them taste each one and say, "Do you want to purchase one of these jams?" Or they said, "Here are 24 types of jams. Taste all of them, and then pick one that you want." And what they found is people who were given fewer options were more likely to actually choose one and were more happy with the choice after having made it, compared to people who had a bunch of different options, who were paralyzed by the amount of choice. How could I determine the difference between 17,000 types of jam? It's ridiculous. Those were the types of people who, under those conditions, might not have ended up choosing to buy one at all, and if they did, they regretted their decision more. So here's the thing, the question then comes up, okay, if we look at the types of people who make choices in one way, by surveying all of the options, or the other, the satisficers, who lock in pretty quickly. Do they have a different experience in their day-to-day lives? Let's take it beyond the consumer domain. Let's go outside the grocery store for a second and ask, in day-to-day life, are these types of people happier or less happy overall? And research by Schwartz and colleagues in 2002 found a reliable relationship between maximizing and well-being. Basically, what they show is that the types of people who say they're more likely to survey all the options before making a final choice are less happy in their day-to-day lives, compared to the people who make relatively simple, quick decisions. And the idea behind this that I want to put forward to you is that it might be worth simplifying your life. I know that after finding out about this research, I used to be a maximizer. I'll admit it. I'm here. I'm open. I'm indie. I'm a maximizer. But once I learned about this research, I started to implement the strategy of satisficing more often. Making a quicker decision. Rather than poring over all of the options, pick one. That just seems to do the job, and then stick with it. And by reducing the amount of pressure you put on yourself every time you make a choice, that frees up your resources in your brain to live a more satisfying life. So take this point and understand that simplifying things can be a key to a happier life. When faced with a decision, find a way to make it as efficiently as possible, and don't worry about all the things that you could have chosen. Because the reality is, the more options you consider, the more you're likely to regret having not made one of those options, ultimately. So if you were picking between 24 different types of cereal, once you finally pick one, you're gonna regret not picking cereals 1, 3, and 9. But if you choose a simple strategy going in, that could be an effective way of increasing your overall sense of well-being. Looking forward to your happiness. For more content like this, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. See you next video.